Hello and welcome back. I am Damien with Project Omnia, and I've got a new video for you today. And it's been a while since I've kind of tackled this particular show, and I haven't really dove deep into this show yet. So I think this is going to be a good video to get into. But today I'm going to be talking about Attack on Titan. And in particular, I'm going to be talking about the fan base and inconsistencies with, let's say, with lessons technically given by the story and the inconsistency in interpretation and application of those lessons. So the first main one that I want to talk about will cover a lot of the things I'm going to talk about here today. And that is essentially the speech that Armin gives Jean in episode 20 of season 1 about Erwin and his decision basically to sacrifice all those scout lives to try to figure out the identity of the female Titan. The crux of that entire speech that Armin gave was essentially Erwin doesn't know the outcome of things. He does know that there's an enemy that needs to be uncovered, a very dangerous enemy, and that no matter what, he has to assume some level of loss. And so it literally comes down to what loss is the better loss, either potentially everyone or what equates to essentially a handful of soldiers in the grand, the more grand scale of things. And that in the end, ultimately, Erwin made the tough decision, and that those tough decisions may not be easy, and it's easy in hindsight to look at them and be like, yeah, but this, and yeah, but that ultimately, those kinds of decisions need to be made, and they are ultimately the more logical decisions to be made. And the reason I feel this one isn't applied as well comes just a few episodes later when we get the reveal of who the female Titan is, which of course is Annie. Now, we won't get into who knew what when in terms of fans, right? Because, that's just different. Like me as an example, I didn't figure it out until the anime literally gives you that information. But, when the attack on Stohess happens, the operation basically to capture Annie begins, a lot of people like to use that, like a lot of fans like to take that example and say, okay, well, all those lives lost are on the scouts in the scout regiment. And it's even presented that way by by Isayama and by the show of Attack on Titan. So, I get narratively why you would do that, right? But logically, it doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. So for one, going back to episode 20 and the Armin to Jean speech, that decision just had to be made. And then the reason that decision had to be made is about is for point number 2, which is, regardless of the fact that they were unaware that this was their circumstance, they were literally at war with the Marleyan Empire, and technically the whole world at the time, but specifically the Marleyan Empire. And so no matter what, even if this exact event was its own event, and this, the things that happened during the Stohess incident wouldn't have been exactly the same, these losses were going to happen either way. It was just about the circumstances of how these losses were going to come about that you could kind of alter and change. And that is ultimately what the Scout Regiment and Erwin Smith decided to do, was, listen, we don't have enough information, we need more information, we need to at least capture this one enemy because we at least know of this threat right here, right now, and we can't let any more life be lost, so we need to carry out this operation regardless of the loss of life that it will incur. And, you can yell and basically argue with a brick wall all day long about how, yeah, well, it still cost people lives. Yeah, it did. But in the end, like, that loss of life, even just in Stohess alone, was going to happen no matter what. Especially if you just operated as if you knew nothing, or if you just operated as if, okay, well, we can't sacrifice all these lives just to capture this one person. Then guess what? You would have been making the decision right then and there to accept certain loss of life just by letting her continue to roam free. So to me, that's one area of major inconsistency in some of the lessons from Attack on Titan and how much of the fan base will apply those lessons. Yeah, you know, it's the characters of the show don't know everything, but we as fans have more information. And so, you know, like when the first season aired and, you know, before readers or viewers knew the exact circumstances of the world, like, you can kind of look at that argument that I've just said is basically a bad one, an illogical argument. You can look at that before you have all the context and say all the things that I'm calling illogical, and it not be that horribly illogical, right? Because there's still variables at play that you don't know about, and you can argue ifs, ands, or buts here. But once you know the circumstances of the world, and you know about the Marlians and the Eldians, and how the world sees the Eldians and Paradise Island, and, you know, all that stuff, when you have all that context, and you're still making that same argument, then I have to personally believe that you are not applying the logic of the Attack on Titan world consistently, or even just a basic, you know, like, rights and ability for self-defense and things like that. So that was the first major one I wanted to talk about. Number two is a more recent event, and this one be a little bit harder for me to argue, but I think I've got some decent points for this one. And that is the Liberio attack carried out by Eren. So, for one, I will say what he did is absolutely, I mean, it is a war crime, right? I mean, the meme is, you know, Eren woke up and chose war crime. I mean, not factually untrue, okay? So, I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to say he's not a war criminal or anything like that. But here's what I am going to say. You know, a lot of people, again, will basically just usurp the idea of the right of self-defense and the fact that war has been being waged by Marley against Paradis for, you know, a century, so, or over a century, and they want to act as if what Eren is doing in this specific attack is somehow different or worse than what Marley has already been doing to Paradis, right? So that is where, again, you start getting into inconsistency, especially as it comes to applying logic and reason to the circumstances of this world. Listen, while Eren, what he did, of course, cost a whole hell of a lot, particularly cost a whole lot of innocent life, here's some harsh truths about that. So, for one, again, with the Marley attacks on Paradis, I mean, how many of those lives were innocent? I mean, pretty much all of them, because no one on the island, up until very recently, was even aware of their circumstances, or essentially that they were at war. So, pretty much everyone that Marley's been killing, that's been all innocent life lost. Whereas, at least with Eren's attack, Eren, for one, his target wasn't specifically the civilians, even though he knew civilians were going to die, because that gets into another point, which is that you're going to have innocent life lost and casualties in war, right? But even though you know that, his actual targets were the military personnel of Marley, and the military leaders, and the political leaders, and, of course, capturing the Warhammer Titan power. So, like, there's a difference in intent from both sides. Marley's intent was always just basically kill everyone in the walls, get the founding power, and in the war / save the world, right? So it's very altruistically favored just for their side, and in a way where they don't care at all. Like, to them, there aren't even innocents, right? Like, the innocent lives they do kill aren't even innocent. It's a justifiable killing, and everyone inside the walls deserves to die. But at least in Eren's case, he's coming at it from a perspective of, well, I need the Warhammer Titan power. I need to take out these Marleyan military leaders and politicians and such, right? And it's all very warlike in the way he's going about it, and the civilian casualties and loss of innocent life are just an unfortunate byproduct of that. Now you can argue, of course, I mean, he doesn't show like a whole lot of remorse or anything while he's doing it, but I mean, that could go back again to Erwin and making tough decisions and just like you don't show that type of stuff, right? You got to kind of like steel your resolve and harden yourself so it doesn't tear you down, the things that you're doing, because to actually make progress, you're going to have to make decisions that aren't easy to make, and that's exactly what Aaron did with that attack. Now, does that make it right or wrong? I mean, I'm not here to say it's right or wrong. What I am here to say is that personally, if I was in Aaron's shoes, I mean, I honestly think it would have been tough for me not to make that decision because it just needed to be done. And then it also comes back to the point of, like I said, since he was there really for war strategy, you know, it really comes down to, let's put some culpability on the shoulders that it should be on. And the simple fact of the matter is yeah, so Aaron's the most culpable out of everyone in the circumstances for that specific attack, right? But that does not mean there's no culpability elsewhere. And what I mean by that is it's very alluded to that Tiber and McGath, and I'm sure some others, are aware that this attack is going to happen, or they're at least aware something is going to happen, right? Yet they still chose to hold this event in a civilian populated area. And listen, Aaron, since his tactic was very war strategy like, Aaron was going to go wherever they went. So again, if they had chosen to do would have been normal, which guess what? I mean, I've even looked into this. In real history, people do not declare, nations have not really declared war in civilian heavy zones, okay? And there's a reason for that, because there have been plenty of times where at a declaration of war, when a nation has been declaring war, they have been attacked, right? And there's even a section in the Geneva Convention about this stuff, about essentially not putting civilian life at risk by holding such events in heavily civilian populated areas. And yet they still did this, knowing full well that something horrible was going to happen and that lots of civilians could lose their lives. So just as those innocent lives are, you know, and their blood is on Aaron's hands, it is also on the hands of McGath and Willie at the same time. They're not without some level of responsibility for this at the same time. And then, of course, to the wider scale of the fact that, again, we're at war, you know, just the Marleyan military overall. And, you know, if they weren't subjugating Paradise Island and Eldians, you know, they wouldn't have to essentially reap what they sow, which is essentially what's happening and what happened in that attack. I mean, you can argue all day long about right or wrong, good, just, this, that, but when it comes to, if you just put yourself in the position of just someone, right? Take all the names and the characterization we know away from these people and just say you were the people being oppressed all this time. You find out that you're in this centuries-long war, you know, suddenly, and that's why your circumstances are what they are, and that you're never ever going to be free because these people won't allow you to be on the other side of the ocean. You know, like, what decisions do you think you would do differently? Especially, so let's keep into consideration the technology that's available at the time, the information they have, how information can be shared, you know, keep all that in mind. Just put yourself in that situation and honestly tell me that you somehow have a more strategic way to handle this that would also result in fewer losses of innocent life. You know, I think it's real easy for people to look at things and forget certain kind of variables that are in play, or to just ignore them in one situation and then prop them up in another. You know, I may have done it once or twice here in this video. We'll see when I look back on it. But, you know, I really just wanted to talk about this because, I mean, I can get kind of, with Attack on Titan in particular, and this particular topic, trust me, I've gotten into some seriously heated discussions about this stuff before. Sometimes it's been me that's been heated, other times it's been other people, you know, sometimes that happens. But I really want a more healthy discussion, which is why I'm here today trying to have a more healthy discussion. But that's pretty much what I have to say for today. I don't want to make this any longer than it already is. My editor may hate me for this video. But I hope you have enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think down below. And if you like the video, leave a like. Like I said, comment with your opinions. And if you're brand new, leave a subscription. Hit that little bell. Get all the notifications. I will have a PayPal link in the description. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.